Yeah, well, let's start with Orange County then. You touched on this conflict that Tamara and Shannon are overcoming, and I agree. This is like kind of a compelling scene for me. Just like the the sort of the venting off of this like built up pressure from all this tension that these two good friends have had over the course of how the 2.5 years or whatever. um I really loved this atmosphere. Like you can kind of feel the energy like lifting and them getting back to this lighter relationship. I thought
Hmm.
it was really interesting, or really nice to see, and also interesting from the perspective of how it is going to change the social makeup of the group.
I couldn't quite figure out the siding of the whole group, to be honest. I came out the episode really thinking I had this. I guess that whole episode for me, the villain was Gina, and I'm not sure if everyone agrees. Maybe
Oh, okay,
not,
yeah.
because she just kept entering these situations where she would just spill the tea and try to stir things up. I'm like, I don't know if I like this about you. I feel like you're kind of just like it's not factual. It was all about misquoting people. I'm like, I don't really like Gina. I feel like she just kind of came in there and like caused a lot of shit. And um, and I also felt really bad for Jen. I just felt like everyone's all for business, especially towards the end of this episode, where they had this kind of like confrontation with her, where everyone just kind of asked her about her own infidelity and her own relationships. Like, well, I don't know if ultimately she has to answer to any of this. Like, I feel she could have just done her own thing and she didn't have to explain herself. But yeah, I just couldn't quite figure out the siding of all the characters because there was a lot of past relationships I couldn't follow.
Yeah. It's interesting that you picked up on Gina being the villain. My final note after watching this show was, "Wow, Gina is having such a great season."
Oh,
And I mean, the fact that she like might be considered a villain, that would not change that for me. Like I think I love villains, and so that's one of the things that's most compelling. But villain is not something that I really got from what she was doing. I feel
yeah.
like she's operating very like strategically socially, and she's also someone that is like kind of playing from behind. Like she is not a top dog here at all. um, I think that what she has been doing with Heather is pretty smart, even if it doesn't like necessarily play out. It kind of like backfires in this episode that we see. But she's trying to align herself with Heather, especially on this trip, because Emily, who is one of her like traditional allies, is not there.
Right.
um, but I think that her, talking with Heather in the shit truck that they were scooping out, I thought that this was smart, and I thought that her read was good. Like, um she this was an opportunity to like show Heather that she had her back and like strengthen that relationship.
Mm.
And also just like, I mean, real talk, when I think it was Gina that said, like, if they're in a restaurant pulling up your IMDb, they're not doing it to say nice things. Like they're doing it to be catty. And so like, just like think about that. Um, and then I thought she really capped it off nicely, and in a really aware way by being like, but you know what? If you are fine with how things are and you want to drop it, I'm like totally willing to drop it. Like she is kind of like putting herself out there for Heather, being like, look, I got your back. This is how I see things potentially being framed. I'm willing to, go after Tamara and Taylor over this and be on your side for it. But if that's not how you want to play this, I'll do whatever you want. Like strategically, the ball's in your court, and I'm willing to be on your side.
Yeah.
And you know, Heather ends up throwing this away during the course of the episode. She immediately rats Gina out to Shannon, which like that seems like a more villainous thing in my opinion. But
Mm,
also, I think that was actually a smart thing for Heather to do. Like when I saw this, I was like, ugh. But also, that's smart because Heather, this whole season, has been really working hard to try to isolate Tamra as like an ally because Tamra is coming back after a long period of being off the show. And Tamara is like an all-star, one of the all-time greatest housewives, and someone that you definitely
oh,
want on your side.
right.
And so to put this out there and use this piece of information as a way to uh, hopefully get Tamara to align with her, I think that was smart for her to do. I think she maybe misread it a little bit because I feel like that ship has sailed now that we see Shannon and Tamara come back together and really make up. I think it's going to be too hard to penetrate that bond. You're never going to be like above Shannon if she's aligned with Tamra. So
Yeah.
um, but I don't blame her for trying and basically doing a very similar thing to what Gina was doing by bringing this information and like selling her out. And I think that when we got to that final scene with the camping, I think that Heather realized that her read was wrong, and I think
Mhm.
she did a really great job of trying to make things up with Gina when Gina was like clearly affected by this.
Right.
Immediately, like Heather's like by her side and being like taking her side and being like, okay, this, yeah, that's not okay. I would be upset about that too, and like following her out because she saw that this relationship with Gina is potentially jeopardized. And there's like huge like deck reshuffling that is happening during this scene because when Gina starts talking to having the conflict with Tamra, then Jenn kind of like pipes up on Gina's side
Right.
and is like, yeah, that this doesn't really make sense to me, or whatever it is that she says. She makes it clear that she's like, siding with Gina and taking her side. And immediately that's when Tamra knows that she's got this trump card that she can play where it's this infidelity that Gina's going to be like immediately affected by and completely sever that relationship so that she's got all these different fronts isolated as opposed to a united front that she's dealing with.
And why was Gina so affected by Jen's infidelity? That's where I maybe missed something.
So her ex cheated on her and
Oh,
she
okay.
is clearly just like not
She's triggered
done
by that.
processing it. Yeah.
That's yeah. I also loved it when Heather did follow Gina to the car in the very end, and I think Gina was about to make a call to her current boyfriend, and Heather was just like, "No, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that, and I'm going to tell you why." But I'm also just like, I feel like you're making this up as you're going along. I feel like you don't
Yeah.
like. I know, like she just had a really long pause. I'm like,
And I'll figure it out in 30
like,
seconds.
yeah, I'm like, and she just hung up on the guy. It's like, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to tell you why right now. I'm about to tell you why. Are you ready for me to tell you why? Just like, this is a really long lead in.
Yeah.
And we see that Gina obviously did not take her advice, and I'm kind of interested in that choice. Like, I was when Heather was giving that advice, I was like, I don't know, but then I was like, maybe that's good advice, but I'm kind of torn on that one. But Gina definitely didn't like it, so I guess it didn't go over well.
Because Heather's advice to Gina was not to run to her current boyfriend, right? Like to not disclose too much about her ex relationship because that would kind of signify that Gina is not over the ex, and that might kind of create turmoil in the current relationship.
Or at least expose that she is ongoingly very upset about this. I'm sure he knows all about it, but that this is triggering her on like a nightly basis because of what her ex did, that he might start to think she's not over her ex or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like this is like a bit. Well, I think this is Heather being opportunist and trying to make a social play and like align
really
herself. So I think that's like at the foremost. That's what it is. But also, I feel like this advice is a little bit, uh, informed by the generational gap between Gina and Heather.
Totally.
Like this is definitely something that someone from Heather's generation, like you can hear that voice and being like, oh, you don't want to push your partner away with this, as opposed to like,
Open up to them.
I feel like our generation is a lot more emotionally open, and so it would be like, okay, yeah, obviously you want to talk to your partner about what's impacting you emotionally. You don't want to just like, shove that down. But this was a really hilarious moment when Gina's like dialing and it's ringing, and Heather grabs the phone. It's like, oh no, she's okay. She's okay. We'll call you back. Like,
The poor
getting a
partner.
phone call.
Yeah, he's just like, okay.
Despite all the partners mostly being assholes, it's like, okay, bye. Like,
Yeah.
This was my scene this
fun.
week. Come on. Yeah. Do they? Yeah. But it was interesting watching Heather, as you said, Craig, like realize. I mean, she even had in her confessional, she was like, "Oh, I hope I don't get left out now that Tamara and Shannon are together." And then there's a few moments where you could really actually see, and I kind of could relate from like feeling left out in elementary school. She was kind of trying to be goofy with them, and they were just like not paying attention to her, and she was just kind of cut out all of a sudden. And I kind of felt for her, but it makes sense that she should, as you very well explained the dynamic and what's going on here and how things are reshuffling. So it's gonna be interesting to watch how that goes.
Craig, you are much more observational than me, just being a first time exposure. I feel like if I wrote the Real Housewives, they would just like kind of be making pancakes and like having a really good time and listening to Dolly Parton the whole day, and then like no one's gonna watch anything. I'm like, why don't we just all get along and like eat banana and pancakes, and it's gonna be great. Which is like not what the show's like.
No, it is super interesting, and this is like really what I was hoping for with like Tamara coming back in, is that it was going to shake things up in this way and see how things land, because I think you just need that to happen and change these dynamics, and so it's interesting to see this happen. I'd be curious to how this would be different if Emily was there, because Gina and Emily, they kind of come together quite a bit, especially on trips. They're like inseparable on trips. So I feel like we might not have got this if Emily was there. Like Gina would not be as compelled to try to bring Heather into the fold. So I'm just really glad that this played out the way it did.
I actually I did make a note in this episode where I just wrote in caps, "Who was Emily?" Because she was just not invited. But I actually kind of liked her character, especially when she showed shots of her younger modeling years, and it was just kind of these catalogs. I'm just like, I kind of love your vibe. I kind of want to know a bit more about you, and your child seems like a monster. Like I want to know like how you handle this world of Housewives. And I was sad that she wasn't there, and I didn't know her and Gina came in as a package. So it's like good to hear that Gina has a bit has other allies that she can draw upon.
Yeah, I'd say it's not like as like strong of a package as some of the other pairs we see, but it is kind of a loose pair. They came on the show at the same time, and that really like plays into this as well. But I mentally just have a really strong association between the two of them. But we see it play out where it's not as like tight as it, as it is in my head.
So what is like, I guess to redirect some attention to the other characters, I was also trying to understand Jen's history with the show, because she was quite focused on this episode. Whereas her own, her private businesses were kind of like being talked about, and everyone was like, should we tell her? Should we not tell her? Like, does she often get kind of not picked on per se, but like, do the ladies kind of like pay her this much attention in general, or how does that usually? How has she played out as a character in the season?
So this is her first season, so she's brand new.
Okay,
so that's kind of like what we're seeing is, how is she going to fit into this group? Is she going to be, whose ally is she going to be? Is she even going to be a useful ally, or is she just like chum in the water, and they're going to use her infidelity as something to like pick apart, and then she doesn't have anything to carry her forward, so she'll be a one and done. At least I think that's how it's going to
Yeah.
play out.
Oh,
I think
I
that
wish.
she's not bringing
Yeah.
anything, and I think she's going to
I
be
think she's just too
gone.
apologetic for what she's doing. I mean, just don't let them pick on you like that. Like, if they're gonna go come at you at this like ring of fire, just like. Of course, there will be no TV again. Again, if I wrote it, I'll be like, I don't have to explain this. Just walk away. There'll be no scene. But that's not how she should do it. But maybe she should just own up more to it.
Yeah. She doesn't have to walk away.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to. I just was like, to build on that. She doesn't have to walk away. She can be like, fuck you. Like, don't criticize my past, whatever. She can do whatever she wants here. She's making a weak choice. She's trying to be amicable. She's trying to understand.
Yeah.
Like, Gina can be upset all she wants about someone else's infidelity. That's, as somebody said, like, largely her problem. I mean, it's great for drama. Like, I'm not complaining as a viewer, but, and like the stuff about him saying about Tamra, he wants to fuck her, whatever. I'm like, again, as a viewer, I enjoy it and I appreciate Tamra's work. She's a genius, but it's also, that's really neither here nor there for normal people. That was not when they were even together. That is not a controversy. But so Jenn needs to toughen up and start playing in the big leagues. And I don't think she can, as you're saying, Greg.
And
I think like she's in a position where, like you said, she's making weak choices, and so the other women are picking up on this, and that they're able to come in and make attacks that would otherwise require like them to expose a bit more vulnerability, like in the Housewives game, right? Like, by Gina dwelling on this affair and like getting so worked up about it, she is exposing a potential like attack point for Jenn. If she was stronger at this, she could be like, yeah, so what, why are you so affected by this, and really use it as a way to like come from, you go on the attack as opposed to like just curling up in a ball. And same with this thing with the like the comment about her boyfriend Ryan being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fuck Tamra. Like, you know, that's another thing where that's an opportunity for Jenn to be like, you know, so what, like, what's the deal with Eddie? Why haven't you told him this? Like, you didn't bring this up until now, and it's because you didn't tell Eddie. Why are you worried about what Eddie thinks? That's nothing. Like, what's going on with you? Like, it's another opportunity for her to be on the tack. But I think, like, you know, Tamra feels completely safe putting this out there because Jenn is playing the game so weak. And same, you know, I think Gina is a smart enough housewife that if she saw that, you know, Jenn was going to be making an attack on this, she would be able to cover it up a bit more and not play as like offensive a game as she has been. But, you know, yeah, Jen's just playing this so weak and just letting herself be torn apart.
I guess, like, in Jen's defense, because like there was a bit of hint that her story was inconsistent depending on who she was talking to. Maybe she was still trying to get the vibe or understand who her ally is or how much she can actually dispose in terms of information, that she had these inconsistencies. But again, like, it worked to her disadvantage because people were like, you're telling lies, your story isn't true, it's not consistent. And I didn't think about it in your lens, Craig, that like she could play offense if she just kind of just twist it a little bit, and if she switched the narrative, I'm like, that's really smart. She should have totally done that, because then the attention would be off her, and she can call out everyone else, and she would kind of gain that. She would gain the upper hand in these situations. I didn't watch the next episode, but it's going to be turning towards maybe a bit about Gina and her dealing with her own stuff. This next episode, they might just turn their attention away from her, and her camera time, like her screen time, will just be cut quite short. So,
yeah. I do want to get into the episode of Real Housewives of New York that we were talking, that we watched. Did you guys have any final thoughts on Real Housewives of Orange County before we move on?
My only final thought is a shout out to my favorite housewife of this show, Shannon, who is a natural born physical comedian, and her genius should be appreciated. I don't know. I just love watching her. I just like, she's so like, she just rolls with it. When they found an eyelash on her shirt, they found an extension hanging out of her hair, and she just did a whole little bit about it. And I just love her. I just really enjoy her. Yeah, that's all.